Hello, my name is Philippa Langley. This short series of films has been done in celebration of the first 100 years of research, the centenary of the Richard III Society. It is one of the oldest and largest historical societies in the world. We hope that you enjoy them. Thank you. Many people today believe that the bones in the urn in Westminster Abbey are the remains of the sons of King Edward IV of England, otherwise known as the princes in the Tower. But is this assumption evidence-based? What evidence we do have tells us that there is no historical, archaeological, or scientific evidence for these being the remains of the princes in the Tower. So let's have a quick look at why we can say that. So first, the history. In 1674, at the Tower of London, while demolition work was in progress, some workmen unearthed the bones of 2 or more children. This was 200 years after the disappearance of the sons of Edward IV. By then, Shakespeare's play had portrayed Richard III as ordering their death while they were resident there. So each time remains were thought to be children were found afterwards at the Tower, it was always assumed that they belonged to the princes. This had happened 3 or 4 times before. It's not known why this time was different. It may have been that they were found in the location of an outdoor stair, but apparently someone interested in history ordered the bones to be gathered up from the heap of rubbish where the workmen had thrown them. They were found at a depth of 10 feet, which was the foundation level of the building in the south of the White Tower, which the workmen had demolished and excavated. But after that, the bones stayed on the rubbish heap for a number of days before they were retrieved. And if you want to read a full account of their discovery, you can find it on the Richard III Society's website. So why were these remains assumed to be those of the princes? The answer lies in what people incorrectly remembered from what had been said about them 150 years earlier in Tudor times. The Tudor playwright William Shakespeare got the story of their alleged killing and burial from various Tudor chronicles that we can trace back to a dramatic narrative written by Thomas More in the 16th century during the reign of Henry VIII. With many factual inaccuracies, it was never published during More's lifetime. More was writing after the reign of Richard III, and he didn't say who his informants were. In fact, this was only one of several stories he said he'd been told, but it was the one that stuck. So what did More say? More wrote that the murdered princes had been buried at the stair foot meekly deep in the ground, under a great heap of stones. He then added that a priest of Sir Robert Brackenbury, the constable of the Tower, took up the bodies again and reburied them elsewhere in a better place. More didn't know where. So when placed under scrutiny, there are a number of inconsistencies with More's narrative. Firstly, we are not told which stair the bodies were under, and as we know, there are many stairs in the Tower of London. Secondly, we're told that the bodies were removed from the stair location and buried elsewhere. Thirdly, that this was accomplished by a lone priest who was able to lift all of the stones and retrieve the bodies 10 feet down. Fourthly, that both the burial and exhumation had been accomplished without anyone in the busy Tower Palace being aware of either event. At the time of Richard III, the Tower was London's foremost palace. This is where the closely guarded crown jewels were kept, and the royal mint and menagerie, and a full garrison of soldiers and armaments to guard the city. It had hundreds, if not thousands, of residents and visitors, and services going in and out to supply them. It also had 15 pubs. So the idea of a secret murder, then a secret grave, 10 feet down, dug in one night, and secretly exhumed on another day, does not stand up to scrutiny. Still, Shakespeare taught us to believe it, and it became the story told at the tower. So what about the archaeology? At the level the bones were discovered is the Iron Age, Roman and Saxon levels at the tower. The prime location on the River Thames had been lived on for centuries, with the White Tower partially built on Roman structures. So could the remains in the urn be a Roman, Saxon or early medieval foundation burial? Possibly. In 1674, with the remains assumed to be those of the princes, King Charles II ordered a marble urn to be made for them and for them to be laid in Westminster Abbey. At the time, Charles was a deeply unpopular monarch, so this was a really good news story for him. But what actually happened was different. The bones were apparently passed around among interested parties, souvenirs were taken, and animal bones substituted. It wasn't until 4 years later that the urn, as we see it today, found its way into the abbey. And we don't know what caused the 4-year delay. So despite such unreliable provenance, the contents of the urn were accepted for centuries as what the writing on the urn said they were. This was equally accepted when the urn was opened in 1933 and they were examined. Without any doubts, they were pronounced to be the princes, although the anatomist undertaking the examination work could not determine the sex, period, or age of the remains. On page 1 of the report, they were described as being 2 boys, and by page 2, they were given the names of the princes, Edward and Richard. They were not, of course, put through DNA testing or radiocarbon dating. It was just assumed again that they were the princes, and revealing a deep confirmation bias. So what does the science tell us? Analysis of the report, the photographs and x-rays from 1933 by modern specialists suggests that there are 2, possibly 3 sets of remains in the urn, and that one of these may be female, the elder set. And there is also nothing to identify a blood relationship between the individuals in the urn. Recently, a historian offered an opinion that when King Charles came to the throne, he would be likely to authorise opening the urn again. The king has never said this, though it was taken up all over the media. However, as we have heard, the identity is not supported by evidence once you know the history, archaeology and science behind the bones. So are they as big a myth as the exhumation and bones in the river story was for the search for Richard III's lost grave in 2012? From what we know, it seems that yes, they are. As a result, I've personally called for the bones to be analysed as soon as royal permission may be granted and our science is ready. We have both sets of DNA, male and female, to test against them. However, it's questionable to believe that there would be usable DNA to test. After the contamination the bones have suffered over the years, the rubbish dump, the passing around in the 1670s, and the re-examination in the 1930s. And they were also x-rayed, which can degrade and destroy ancient DNA. As a research organisation, the Richard III Society supports an examination of the bones in the urn. We believe that evidential truth matters over rumour, story, myth and legend. It has a team of leading specialists ready, world experts in their respective fields, for when permission might be granted and technology up to the task. In the meantime, a new plaque or information panel to sit beside the urn and clarifying what we know would help to educate and inform. You can visit the Society website to learn more about the bones in the urn in Westminster Abbey. So thank you for watching. We hope that these have been helpful, and if you want to find out more about any of these subjects, please visit the Richard III Society website. Thank you.